We have breaking news in the probe involving Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. A major breakthrough today in this federal sex crime probe that involves a Republican official, Joel Greenberg, and his ally, Congressman Gaetz. The news breaking is that Mr. Greenberg is not only pleading guilty, which first emerged in a federal filing this week, but tonight we're learning he will cooperate with federal investigators. That's bad news for anyone that Greenberg has incriminating evidence on. And tonight we know what we did not know yesterday, or last week, or in March when this volcanic story first broke. Greenberg has some kind of credible information to offer to the officers involved in investigating this, of course. The feds think that at least some of this information is credible. There's no reversing this train. The newest court filing states that Greenberg will cooperate fully with the prosecution of other persons. I show you that up on the screen, and we just got this filing in our newsroom late today. This is not what everyone knew would happen. This is a big deal. It shows Mr. Greenberg isn't even fighting some of the most serious offenses, and I'll get to that. So what does this mean exactly right now? At a minimum, in this sensitive, high-profile political case, it means the feds believe he has something credible on other people. Well, they don't make that call lightly. Now, does that mean that we, as journalists, know who the feds think those people are? Well, let me be clear. This court filing doesn't say. Greenberg's first court appearance for the plea is Monday. So while there are understandable clues, we are not confirming tonight who these other people are that he may have dirt on, according to the feds, because at the very high bar of the government's potential case, the feds aren't saying yet who they are. Now, that is the fairest, most precise way we can put the situation, according to the reporting, with this new information. Having said that, we also know what Greenberg, not the feds, thinks he has, because he has already accused a specific person, Matt Gaetz, of paying, quote, for sex with multiple women, as well as a girl who was 17 at the time, according to that alleged letter obtained by the Daily Beast, which NBC News has not seen or verified. That's not all. There's also reports the feds have spent now hours asking questions about whether Congressman Gaetz or others in his circle had sex with a 17-year-old girl in 2017. And that person reportedly 100% talking to prosecutors about Gaetz. Now, for his part, the congressman denies all allegations. He has not been charged. And while Greenberg's plea gets him out of many charges, we can see now for the first time exactly what he is pleading guilty to. It includes serious felonies such as sex trafficking and admitting to those damning transactions that were reported with the online receipts. Over 150 transactions, including payments for commercial sex acts and paying a minor for part of the time for sex acts, quote, with him and others. The feds are deploying this case and this brand new guilty plea to go after those other suspects. Indeed, they have a duty to pursue any others involved in what will now become a convicted felony scheme. Now, whether those other people are high or low profile, whether they're in office or not, they have to be pursued under the law, as the feds now have said there was some kind of sex crime conspiracy here, and they have someone pleading guilty to it, which means it's not even debatable. It's not even going to trial. Now, Greenberg's not the only person with potentially incriminating information in this blockbuster development. Gaetz' ex-girlfriend is in talks for legal immunity for cooperation. That's according to Politico. And the Gaetz probe has reportedly moved into its final stages after also obtaining and scouring the congressman's phone for possible and related evidence. With all that in mind, we bring in our experts. Danya Perry is a former federal prosecutor with the famed SDNY, and Joyce Vance, a former U.S. attorney and MSNBC columnist. Both of our experts have been covering and analyzing this story with us up to this point. And so with that in mind, Joyce, I'm curious what you think of these developments and how they fit into the way we have understood the case, which has started with some of the most sort of brazen, identifiable alleged crimes, now several of those crimes becoming guilty pleas, and then moving to other material that may need more evidence or corroboration.
This is the development that we've all expected ever since the news first broke that Greenberg was trying to negotiate a plea deal with federal prosecutors. It's interesting that it's taken such a lengthy period of time for him to get to this stage where they've offered him the plea, it suggests that prosecutors were meticulous about checking out the details in the story that Greenberg told them, because he is not a witness that the jury is going to be, I think, inclined to believe. He looks with these 33 charges. It's hard to figure out how Greenberg had any time to perform the duties of his elected office. He was so busy criming. But apparently something has checked out, and prosecutors believe he has value to offer. And on Monday, they'll see if a federal judge will accept that plea agreement and let the case move forward.
And Danya, reading again from the new filings, you have other men who Greenberg introduced the minor to, quote, engage in commercial sex acts with the minor in Greenberg's presence when the minor was under the age of 18. These are very serious offenses. I would note legally, these type of filings are quite precise. This is not like a tweet. This is not like just people talking. So when you see, as you've been a federal investigator like Joyce yourself, a prosecutor, when you see that reference to, quote, men, that would seem to be explicitly plural, which means means Greenberg plus at least two?
Yeah, I think the factual recitation is very detailed, as you say, and it goes to pains, I think, to make clear that not only is there corroboration, but that there are other targets out there. And as you said, it doesn't only have to be Matt Gaetz. In fact, with respect to some of the other charges, at least, there are other possible co-conspirators that fly off the page. But certainly with respect to the sex trafficking and the sex trafficking of a minor in particular, the filing goes to some lengths to make clear that there were co-conspirators, that Mr. Greenberg was aware of what they did, and in fact had watched some of the sexual contact. So they are giving a little bit of a roadmap, I think, of what we can expect to see in the days or weeks or months to come.
Yeah, and you mentioned the corroboration, which is important regardless of how people may feel about anyone caught up in the investigation. This is about facts and what really happened, not anything else. The New York Times, dealing with the same court documents I mentioned that have made such explosive impact today, says prosecutors revealing they have evidence they say corroborates Greenberg's admissions. Exactly what we've been talking about. Quote, a series of communications and transactions Greenberg had with the, quote, girl appeared to design to bolster the credibility of Mr. Greenberg as a witness. Danya, walk us through that, because it would appear from the way Mr. Greenberg has conducted himself that there will be some credibility problems, that he has already said and done things that are misleading, deceitful, untrue. So walk us through what you or your team might do at SDNY in a situation like this, where you're trying to then move past that to figure out what you can prove. They obviously don't want to be on the wrong end of this, only taking his word for it. They're themselves jailing him, the prosecutors, by their own view of him being a very serious felon.
Yeah, as Joyce said, there's an incredible amount of criming that's detailed at length in this filing, and it's not just, sometimes you'll see acts of violence or narcotics trafficking. A lot of these go really squarely to his credibility. In fact, one of the charges, the cyberstalking charge, has him lying about sexual contact by another adult man with another child. And so there's a lot of built-in defenses, or a lot of built-in fodder for cross-examination by, a defense lawyer if and when Mr. Greenberg takes the stand. So, of course, the prosecutors, and they've made this very clear in this filing, have spent a lot of time trying to corroborate this. And luckily, Mr. Greenberg is not just a criminal, but he's a terrible one. Literally left his fingerprints on some documents, literally has receipts, literally wrote out a detailed handwritten confession. So there's going to be a lot there for them. They likely, as Joyce said, they've spent a lot of time. So no doubt before entering into this plea agreement have already done a lot of that hard work, have spoken certainly with lots of witnesses, including, as you brought up, Ari, it seems, this former girlfriend of Mr. Gaetz's, who is seeking, according to the reports, immunity for herself. So she could be a very, very bad witness for Mr. Gaetz, should the prosecutors go down that road.
So, Joyce, what do you see here on the side of Matt Gaetz? Because as we've taken pains to explain here to viewers, there's a difference between what Greenberg says and what reports like Daily Beast and others that have been all over this story cite from him and his circle. That's here, right? And then there's when the feds actually find something that they want to use. That's a much higher standard. What's going on in Gaetz' world? What would they say or look at legally here to try to argue that this may still not ensnare him?
Well, we know that this issue with Greenberg in at least one other case, supposedly lying about an individual who he was involved in a political race with and saying that he was involved with sexual conduct with a minor. We know that Gaetz' lawyers have already come forward, his spokespeople, and used that to suggest that Greenberg is unreliable. So what they're worried about now is likely how well the federal government has been able to corroborate charges. And that's the difficult decision that they'll have to face in handling any steps federal prosecutors take. Ari, it's worth noting that the Middle District of Florida, where this case is being prosecuted, that is a large and well-regarded U.S. Attorney's Office. They have folks who've been in that office for a couple of decades, lots of institutional knowledge and expertise, and they're well aware of federal rules that require that they only indict if they believe that they have sufficient evidence not only to obtain a conviction, but to sustain it on appeal. If prosecutors in Orlando indict Matt Gaetz, expect the case to stick. It'll be a good one.